Yo, I haven't really been making no kind of Marvel Spider-Man videos or any type of Marvel videos or Marvel game videos in a minute. Like, I gotta get the channel back going. Alright, so shout out to my boy Caboose. From the title of Caboose's video, he's speaking about things to be corrected in Marvel Spider-Man 3. So we're gonna hop into that. See what he's gonna talk about. Of course, I'm gonna be stopping the video sometimes, telling my opinion, expressing how I feel about what he thinks or whatever the case may be, bro. It's gonna be a good video, I'm sure of it. I'm gonna eat this apple before I react to this video. I ain't about to be
Now, I obviously know that there are some people out there that have their issues with Marvel Spider-Man 2. I get it. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. For me, it is still honestly a masterpiece. It is one of the best superhero games I've ever played. I've played through that story multiple times. Obviously, now having New Game Plus, I got to jump back in and re-experience it with all my upgrades. It's such a fun game. And even though I think it's a masterpiece, I still have some problems, and I do think there is room for improvement. So I figured, let's jump in. Let's go over 7 things that Marvel Spider-Man 3 needs to get right. And the first thing being the MJ missions. This has been a point of contention across the entire franchise.
She was OP in every mission, bro.
This has been something that a lot of people have debated about, a lot of people have had gripes, and some people have even defended. I'll say I fall somewhere in the middle.
It was fun,
in Marvel Spider-Man 1, there were definitely some MJ missions where it grinds the pace of the game to a halt. Then in Marvel Spider-Man 2, they picked up the pace a little bit. Now she can actually sprint. Now her little taser can actually shoot people towards the end of the game. It's kind of fun, I'm not gonna lie, and you turn into like John Wick. But then, yeah, okay, she gets a little overpowered, and it kind of takes you out of the experience a little bit. I think if we're gonna rework these missions, there are 3 missions that come to mind across the entire Spider-Man franchise where you're playing as non-superpowered characters that are very effective. The first one being when you're playing as Miles Morales in Marvel Spider-Man 1, and you're running from the Rhino. It is tense. You feel the stakes, and you are worried that this dude is going to crush you. Then there's that
Miles mission was insane, bro. I was scared for my life playing that joint.
MJ mission where you're in Tombstone's hideout.
That was good too.
The stakes feel high because of what you just saw Tombstone do. It makes you feel like, oh man, this guy's gonna come out here and murder me if I get caught. And another one is when you guys are sneaking around trying to hit that thumbs up button. So, you know, why don't you just scroll down and do it, okay? Stop dancing around it. But in all seriousness, the third most effective mission where you're playing as MJ in Marvel Spider-Man 2 is when you're running away from Peter with the symbiote taking control. These missions work best when you feel the tension. And I feel like we lost that towards the end of Marvel Spider-Man 2 when we go into the cave with MJ. That could have been a perfect opportunity to essentially have a Last of Us mission when you're trying to hide from clickers. So I think if we're going to have MJ missions, if we're going to have missions where you're playing as characters that aren't Spider-Man, in order to make them most effective, you need to feel that tension. You need to know that this character is just a regular person. They don't have spider powers, so the stakes gotta be high. I don't think we need to get rid of them entirely because there are instances where playing as the characters can very much work with the narrative of the story. It's just that sometimes it feels forced, or sometimes, especially the case with the first game, it slows things down too much. Next up for me, this is a personal preference, and it is suit selection. This one may seem minor in the grand scheme of things, but in my opinion, I really felt like Peter's suits were lacking in Marvel Spider-Man 2. Miles had a really solid collection that pulled from the comics and his animated films, while also giving a solid selection of Insomniac-made suits. But Peter's suits were a large majority of returning costumes from the first game, his entire selection of live-action movie suits, most of which, again, were in the first game, and a few comic suits here and there.
That's a period suit with fire.
We basically get to use any costume that's ever appeared in a movie, but I feel like there were some returning suits from Spider-Man 1 that I would have preferred to just be a suit that came from the comics, a new suit from the comics. I also think that suit variants were a fun idea in theory, but it prevented us from getting things like a proper Superior Octopus suit in favor of it just being a variant for the Superior Spider-Man.
It was a variant. It was
fire. I know this is something that people debate till the end of time. Okay, I understand that everyone has their own opinion when it comes to what costumes they want to see in their Spider-Man games. And I know from speaking to the folks working on these games that they definitely hear these community requests. So I'm hoping that come Marvel Spider-Man 3, we have a really solid selection for both Peter and Miles, filled with suits that, yes, come from the movies, that are original designs from Insomniac, but also are our comic book suits that people know and love. Then at number 5, I've got web constructs. Okay, Marvel's Spider-Man 2 introduced the idea of different abilities for our Spider-Man. Peter had the Iron Arms and the symbiote powers. Miles has the Venom abilities, but there's also a new player in town now. As we saw in the post-credit scene for Marvel Spider-Man 2, Cindy Moon has been introduced, and we can expect that going into Spider-Man 3, we may have Silk as a playable character.
Bro, all right. It only makes sense to have Silk as a playable character. I could be wrong though. Before Wolverine comes out, there should be a second Miles game, or Miles and Silk, or Miles and something, like some type of game to build up Cindy Moon, basically, if they're gonna really involve Silk inside of Marvel Spider-Man 3. That would be clutch. But I would love to see her in Marvel Spider-Man 3 in terms of like playable. Like, that would be crazy.
And if Silk is going to follow suit with the different ability set that we got in Marvel Spider-Man 2, then I think this is a perfect opportunity to now introduce web constructs as different attacks that you can utilize. Some of my favorite Spider-Man game combat ever is Shattered Dimensions, playing as the Amazing Spider-Man. And again, having those different web constructs being a part of your attacks, it's so much fun. And it just makes it so that you know that Spider-Person you're playing as isn't relying on tech, but rather their own webs to get through the fight. And I mean, while we're on the topic, at number 4, another key thing that Spider-Man 3 needs to get right is really Cindy Moon and how she's going to fit in the narrative. Now, in the game, she looks a lot younger, maybe even younger than, or at least the same age as Miles Morales. She might be the same age as Miles. So I assume that means she's going to have a different origin than from what we know from the comic books. The gist of it is, in the comics, Silk's origin is that she's bitten actually by the same spider that bit Peter. And then she's on the run, she goes into hiding, and eventually Peter is the one to find her. And it doesn't look like, again, they're going to be following that origin. No,
definitely not.
So I'm wondering how exactly they plan to bring her into the fold, how they plan to make Silk a potential playable character in Marvel's Spider-Man 3, and how they'll make it make sense that a third person gets spider powers.
It's the way he said it.
Sometimes the comics has kind of the benefit of utilizing the multiverse as excuses for how all these different spider people exist. But outside of some fun little...
Hold on, yo, I gotta get some allergy medicine. My eyes are killing me right now.
Easter eggs and maybe a fun side mission here or there, the Insomniac Spider-Man franchise is trying to stay grounded. It's trying to stay in one world. So how Cindy Moon is going to fit into that world, how we're going to get Silk introduced, I'm interested to see. I'm certain Insomniac also wants to make sure they get this right. I mean, they definitely want to do something different rather than following the brand synergy, because they very easily could have made it so that that post-credit scene was just Gwen Stacy. But moving on, though, back to gameplay, something that I think is integral and something that I honestly think is just that final missing puzzle piece to complete and make Marvel Spider-Man 3 the ultimate Spider-Man gaming experience, and that's the ability to do slingshots anywhere.
I feel like they're gonna go all out because of the fact that a lot of fans, or they know that a lot of fans have been saying like, hey, PlayStation push y'all to drop the game too early. Maybe they can go through a PlayStation saying, hey, we need to work longer on the next one. Hopefully, we'll see.
Amazing Spider-Man 2 game, believe me, I'm trying to forget about it as well, okay? I hate the hero menace system in the game, and there is a lot in there that is definitely a huge step back for Spider-Man games in general. But honestly, there are some redeeming qualities in the gameplay, and one of the coolest aspects is the ability to build up a slingshot from anywhere. As long as you got a hard surface on either side of you in mid-swing, you can then just charge up your slingshot and send yourself flying. I'm so glad that slingshots in general were a thing that were introduced in Marvel Spider-Man 2. I even love, too, that there are some dedicated points on the map where you can do a super slingshot, but I do wish that I can just go into a swing and then right on the fly, boom, there's 2 buildings between me. Let me charge up a slingshot and send myself flying. Now, in the runner-up, though, of things that I think Marvel Spider-Man 3 needs to get right, it's honestly just to get rid of the anti-venom suit. I was positive that after you beat the game, when you get rid of all the symbiotes in the city or whatever it is that happens, that the anti-venom suit would then go away as well. I guess technically that's not how it works, as that's now no longer a symbiote and something different. different now that Mr. Negative has infused his powers with it. And I understand too that from a gameplay standpoint, the idea here was to allow us to keep the symbiote abilities and for it to make sense canonically within the story. For me though, I just don't think we should be able to have the symbiote powers without the consequences.
Right.
So I'm hoping that going into Marvel Spider-Man 3, they just bring up some sort of excuse or just mention somehow in the story that he isn't able to use the anti-venom suit anymore. And then we just go back to grassroots for Peter Parker's Spider-Man. He's just using maybe the Iron Arms if you want to.
Wait, so maybe he's... Oh, so you think he shouldn't use the anti-venom suit or shouldn't have it, basically. Huh, how would they go... Will they go with it as simple as saying, like, hey, he can't use it anymore in some way that Peter explains that? Or, like, I wonder how that will work. How would that work?
Bring those back, or maybe just going and relying on his webs and just the powers that he started off with. Because who knows, Marvel Spider-Man 3 could be the final game in the Insomniac franchise, or at the very least, it could be Peter's final game.
That's what I think.
Insomniac franchise.
Peter's final game. Yeah, I can see that happening.
The death of Peter Parker, and well, who would that death be at the hands of? None other than the Green
I don't think
Goblin.
he's gonna die.
That is obviously the number one thing that Marvel Spider-Man 2 needs to get right. This is the quintessential Spider-Man villain. This is the Joker to Batman. This is the final boss of his entire Rogues Gallery. At least that is how I feel about it. And since that first game, they've been planting seeds that they're going to inevitably get us to the Green Goblin. Oscorp has these prototypes of what would be pumpkin bombs, of what would be a Green Goblin suit. Now in Marvel Spider-Man 2, on Harry's deathbed, Norman is asking to get him the G serum, as we can all imagine is
Goblin
serum.
Exactly.
And for the post-credit scene, Norman is at his wit's end, and he reaches
this was an interesting scene
to ask him for help as they're ready to now reach the final chapter. I've said in multiple videos that there's really one main thing that I'm hoping for out of this interpretation of Green Goblin, and that's for him to look more like 616 Green Goblin and less like the Incredible Hulk Green Goblin.
Okay. I'm sure he's going to look more like 616. Excuse me. I think he's gonna definitely be in a suit. I mean, I don't see him being Ultimate Spot. I said Ultimate. Yeah, I don't see him being Ultimate Goblin. That would be crazy though. That would be insane. But yeah, I see him being more of the sinister ass nigga in the suit. That's how I see him. Like
that we got from the Ultimate Universe. We already fought a giant monster in this game with Venom.
Yeah, I don't see him.
We need to tread that old ground in Marvel Spider-Man 2. I want him on the glider. I want him with a goblin face. I want him throwing pumpkin bombs at me. And I can imagine that the folks at Insomniac are feeling the pressure. I know just as much as anybody that they want to get this right. And it's hard for me to provide any other suggestions besides the ones that I just did. The only other thing that could be cool is if we were to have a playable Green Goblin. Venom was playable in Marvel Spider-Man 2, and heck, Green Goblin was playable in the original Spider-Man movie game, and New Goblin was playable back during the Spider-Man 3 movie game. So it would be pretty sweet if maybe we had a little opportunity to get on the glider, fly around the city, and wreak some havoc. I don't know. That might be asking for too much, but at the very least, I really, really hope that they nail Green Goblin. I imagine that they're going to do something like the Goblin Nation. They're going to have these minions for us to fight. That's always what they manage to do with these games, because at the end of the day, it's a video game. And plus, I mean, Silk being potentially involved in the narrative of this game, she is definitely tied to the Goblin Nation storyline, specifically with her brother, so there's a lot that can happen here. And we're just gonna have to wait and see. Marvel Spider-Man 3 is definitely a long ways away, and this list here could
this shit
change by
the 4
years away. We get to that game's release. But one thing is for sure, once we start to get some news for Marvel Spider-Man 3, once we potentially start to get some news for a DLC for Marvel Spider-Man 2, if that's happening, I got you guys covered right here on this channel. Subscribe, turn on those notifications. You don't want to miss a thing. And with that being said, let me now kick it to you guys. What are some things that you think Spider-Man 3 needs to get right? Sound off with your thoughts in the comments. I've been Caboose. I'll see you guys later.
Good video, bruh. Yeah, I agree with most of that for sure. I agree with most of that. I think they can't up the suits for Peter, of course. Add a few features. They could do so many things with different features though. Just take y'all time. Keep taking your time. That's all I can really say. And yes, 100% to the Goblin being in a suit. 1,000% has to be. That has to happen. That would be fire. Oh my God, fire! Yeah, we don't need Ultimate Goblin. Excuse me. Yeah, I did a lot of thinking about that too in the recent past. We don't need a lot of, or we don't need Ultimate Goblin. We don't need Ultimate Goblin at all, in my opinion. Like, I feel like we should have Goblin in a suit for sure, and also seeing Norman go crazy and things of that nature, have double personality and things that that would be perfect. That would be perfect. But hey, man, if you enjoyed this video, definitely leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Please turn on notifications to get notified when I upload a stream. If you didn't like the video, dislike the video, man. You know what I'm saying? So, but hey, yeah, I'm gonna catch y'all, bro. More videos is on the way. I'm actually about to record another one right now, so let's get it. We working late. It's like 2 in the morning. But y'all, deuces.
Yo, hold on my weight, but I'm all alone. No place to go, so ready to crash, I'm out of my zone. Still waiting for hope, still calling for faith, but hung up the phone. No place to go, bet on the stakes, or losing the throne. No place.